technobuffalo.com.
I'm on a Motorola Xoom, the new Google Android 3.0 powered tablet from Motorola and Verizon.
And I'm on an Apple iPad, the first iOS powered tablet from Apple.
And this
is Tablet Wars.
All right, let's get these back on the side we started on. Sorry about that. Not to be confusing. But anyway, so the Xoom, you're looking at $799 off contract, $599 with a 2-year contract on Verizon. iPad for the similar 32 gigs with 3G connectivity and Wi-Fi, you're looking at $729 off contract. No contract at all. There's no contract with it. You get the data as you go. And I may have misspoke earlier, just to clarify, it is available through Verizon, but there's not a Verizon version yet that's Verizon 3G compatible. You can buy it through Verizon, you get a MiFi with it, you get the Wi-Fi version with a MiFi, that kind of thing. But so through AT&T, the 3G version, $729 no contract. Verizon, the off-contract price is $799 for the Xoom, or $599 with a 2-year contract. Now, Verizon, you know, with the Xoom, a couple of things have been mentioned about it's going to be upgradable to 4G within the next couple of months, and so you won't have to pay extra for that, although talk about having to send the device in to get upgraded, that kind of thing. We're not going to get into it now. We'll see what happens with that. But basically, you know, folks from Motorola have said that part of the price being a little bit higher than iPad is because of the upgradability to 4G. So, you know, we'll see. Also, you can use the Xoom as a personal hotspot, as a Wi-Fi hotspot. You cannot do that with iPad unless you get into jailbreaking, which, you know, basically we're not going to go into that right now, but you can jailbreak the iPad, you can root Xoom to get into all that kind of stuff. But to kind of go back, you know, those are kind of the basic specs. You know, to me, again, at the risk of repeating myself, I think the big difference, you know, is the cameras and the form factor. And the cameras, you know, we should see the new iPad should have at least a front-facing camera. The back-facing camera, I don't think is a big deal. The front-facing, you know, for video chat, I think is very compelling. But otherwise, you know, the form factor to me, I prefer the 16:9 widescreen on the Xoom. But then, you know, just like with iPhone versus all the Android devices, most of it comes down to the operating system, the ecosystem, and it's a matter of personal preference. And so basically, you know, with the iPad, you've got, you know, a device that's been out for a long time, it's a device that's been out for a while now, and a platform that's been out for a long time, and you've got tons and tons of developer support. You know, the whole Apple ecosystem with the App Store, with iTunes, with iBooks now, you know, and then you've got Android, which has really started to come on strong. And there's a big argument to be made that you don't necessarily need, you know, 100, 200, hundreds of thousands of apps. You just need some, you know, a smaller amount of quality apps. But, you know, as these things tend to go, the more apps you have, the more quality apps you'll have. That percentage of quality apps is lower on both platforms. So on iOS, you have more choices, more to sift through, but potentially more quality apps. But definitely the Android market, you know, we've seen some updates to the Android market recently. The web version of the Android market now is available, which I think is a big plus. You know, and on the Honeycomb tablet here, on the Xoom, you've got your books and your Android apps inside of one interface. The interface, you know, looks pretty nice to me. It's kind of, you've got that similar kind of vibe, you know, it's not like Apple invented this, but a similar vibe with your featured apps kind of rotating, and then, you know, your grid below of your choices. I like, though, what Google's done here, you know, making it a little bit easier to read with the categories. They've got a separate category just for tablet apps, and a couple of neat tablet apps. CNN is a pretty nice app. Pulse, I'll go down here to, Pulse, I already got rid of my notifications. The Pulse RSS reader is pretty nice, I think, pretty cool. I've customized it. I've got my, you know, my tech feed, my Techno Buffalo and Gadget. ScatterTech, kind of a cool site. Some kids up in, some people up in Davis. Cool site, nice folks, become friends with them, so give them a little plug. Then I've got my sports, my True Hoop, and my car blog and stuff. Anyway, and then you can actually put in your Facebook links down there as well, which is kind of fun. But, you know, similar apps, obviously, for iOS, you've got more choices. But just to say that the Android market definitely coming on stronger. So the whole app thing isn't as big of a difference as it used to be. Still, if you're into apps, you're going to have more choices with the iPad. And, you know, kind of the big name apps generally are coming out sooner, or, you know, kind of breakthrough apps. People are just developing for the the Apple ecosystem first in a lot of cases, because frankly there's more money to be made. That being said though, Android market coming on strong, and this, there's a flood of Android 3.0 tablets coming out, just announced and starting to hit the market. So we should see a lot more with 3.0 in the future, which kind of leads me to the big thing about, the platforms, which is basically just the approach to doing things. And it's very prototypical Apple, Google. Apple, very controlled, the whole thing through Apple. You sync the device through iTunes, you've got your Apple stores, App Store, iTunes Store for all your media, iBooks, everything. And there's not a whole lot you can do customization-wise. You can move your apps around, you can add web shortcuts, you can make folders now, but that's kind of it. You can set your wallpaper and your lock screen, but you're not going to do a whole lot beyond that. It's a very simple device. It's kind of a modal approach where there is multitasking, but it's really kind of more like fast app switching with some background processes. But it's simple to use, and Apple kind of picks the things, they kind of curate for you, the thing, depending on your viewpoint, they curate or they dictate, the things that they think most people are going to want to do with the device most of the time. We'll turn up the brightness there. And so you've got your media controls, and you've got, your built-in apps that have notifications, and now they're opening up background processes so you can stream Pandora in the background, that kind of thing. But, it's kind of limited to keep things simple and to keep things kind of going, from one to the next with a lot of control over stuff. With Google, it's more like a computer, it's more like you can do a lot more to customize it. I mean, even if you get into the whole jailbreaking and rooting thing, there's a lot you can do with a jailbroken iPad. There's more you can do with a rooted Android device if you really want to get into, cooking up custom ROMs and all that kind of stuff. But with Android, you've also got the choice of widgets. And so I've got, a YouTube widget that's, a kind of a live active widget that I can scan through. I can add, another widget here. So let's add we'll add the books widget. So these kind of tiled things that are, to me the animations aren't as slick, they're not quite as polished as Apple's, but they offer more functionality. And then you've got down here, your notification system, so I can see that I've got a Twitter notification, I've got new mentions, that kind of stuff that's just a little more functional, and there's sort of more potential in terms of using this thing like a computer with the sort of computing, multiple things going on at once, multiple apps running, multiple notifications, multiple windows, all that kind of stuff. A little more potential shown in Honeycomb than in iOS. With iOS, on the iPhone, on the iPod Touch, on the iPad, it's Apple kind of pushing a new way of doing things. There's sort of new vision for personal computing, almost personal versus, kind of professional getting work done computing on OS X, except that Apple enthusiasts will argue you can get a lot done on iPad with all the different apps that are out there now, which is true. On the I'll just mention here on the Xoom, there's actually no physical button on the front. Android users might be a little, like, where are the buttons? What's going on? It's all down here. You've got 3 icons that are usually available at any given time. Sometimes you'll see a 4th. You've got back, home, and then you've got this one that lets you flip through your recent apps. And then up here you've got your search, your voice search. You can go straight to your app drawer that way, and then you've got your plus button that'll take you to that customization menu. And I'll show you real quick voice search, because Google Voice Search just continues to impress me. Search for the oldest marathoner ever. Search for the oldest marathon or ever. Close enough. There it is, the oldest marathon runner. Yeah, there was a guy, 98 marathon runner. These marathon runners, over 90 years old, men and women. Amazing. Anyway, so, way too much to go into in one video, or even what's turned into kind of a 2-part video in terms of really comparing everything about these devices. But basically, it's shaping up to be very similar to what's happened with Android phones. The one thing I will mention is that I'm very curious to see if companies are going to start really customizing Android 3.0. There's a lot of potential here, and frankly, using the Xoom has been better than I thought it was. I was a little wary going into it. Oh, I forgot. I was starting to wrap up. I forgot I wanted to show you the virtual keyboards here, because I think that's interesting. All right, so we'll call up the keyboards here, and pretty similar in terms of basic functionality, basic QWERTY boards. With Google, you've got a couple extra sort of settings buttons. You've got an emoticon button. You got that button that takes you in your input options, and then you've got the voice search button. And then they added things like, the virtual shift lights and that kind of stuff. With the Apple keyboard, they kind of went simpler, like Apple tends to do. And instead of return, they've got a go button. A little less geeky, a little more mainstream consumer friendly. Not saying one is better than the other. But I found with the Xoom, with the 10-inch widescreen display, it's still for me not the ideal touch typing solution, and kind of hard to do here with the camera in the way. I'll move this back a little bit, but I'm at least able. All right. So it missed the C. I hit the spacebar instead. And then, jump mode instead of jumped. But I'm at least able to do a facsimile, an approximation of touch typing. And then if we go into portrait mode, much easier for me to type with 2 thumbs. And you can see Google Instant working there. So a lot easier for me to type with 2 thumbs because the widescreen screen layout makes for a narrower device when you hold it the long way in portrait mode. With the iPad, I've found, and I've had the iPad basically since it came out, and I've found I can't type touch type style at all. I can't even fake it with the iPad. It's not big enough for my hands, and so I wind up typing. I wind up typing that. Well, I'm not in. There's no space bar because I'm underscore mode because it's a URL. But anyway, I wind up typing, with 2 fingers instead. And then when I go into portrait mode, I can do the 2 thumb, but it's a little bit wider than the Xoom is. You can see, it's actually a fair amount wider, and so it's harder for me. And I have relatively big hands. It's harder for me to type. With 2 thumbs, they have to stretch a little bit more. So that's where again I think that the widescreen mode is actually I think Apple kind of messed up here. I think the widescreen mode is actually better, and you're going to see. You already have with the T-Mobile G Slate, the Optimus Pad from LG. You're going to see more widescreen form factor Android 3.0 devices in different sizes coming out, and possibly non-widescreen as well. Whereas with iPad, you're pretty much limited to what you see is what you get with one device. Unless the rumors come true and Apple introduces kind of a second size that's sort of in between iPod Touch and iPad, like a 5 or 7-inch screen. I have a Barnes & Noble Nook Color, which is Android based. It runs a custom operating system. That's a smaller form factor, and I think that's actually a really nice size for a tablet. HTC's Flyer, which is an Android 2.2 device, or 2.4 device rather, not 3.0. That's a 7-inch screen. I think that's also a really nice size for a tablet. But different strokes for different folks, and that's one of the things that Android has going for it for sure. Should also mention what I was starting to say before is that I'll be very, very curious to see what companies do as far as customizing the Android experience. So obviously Motorola just chose to come out with stock Android, no Moto Blur, nothing like that on here. With LG, it's similar, except they added their 3D functionality. With HTC, they've always done a lot of customization with HTC Sense. I'll just kind of show you some of the different things here while I'm talking. And, they've got their new Flyer, their first tablet, which is an Android 2 tablet, not Android 3. But a lot of customization went into that thing. And, that'll really set it apart in the marketplace when it comes to kind of, the person who doesn't care what the specs are. They just kind of care what it does. So really looking to see what companies will do with Android 3. I think you can do a lot. There's a lot of power there, especially with the dual-core optimization. And getting some, this is just rumor. I'm just making stuff up on educated guesses. But I think you might see some interesting stuff from Sony. Rumors coming that Sony gonna push out, Sony or Sony Ericsson gonna push out an Android tablet, probably a 3.0 tablet in the near term, and they've got a lot going on with all their entertainment holdings, as well as the whole PlayStation certified thing. So we might see something interesting from them. And then you've got companies like Asus and Acer and ViewSonic and all these different companies doing Android stuff. So very interesting to see what happens in the coming months with Android 3.0 and how that progresses and how it's customized by different companies doing their own thing. And then, of course, to see what Apple's got going on with iPad 2 and possibly, another device. So, as far as picking a winner, I mean, it's hard to pick a winner. Right now, I would say if we were living in a vacuum, not worried about what's coming, down the pike, if you're into apps, iPad's got many more. I would probably go with iPad because the screen is more sensitive, more accurate, brighter, a little bit brighter, pops a little bit more, and then you've got all these apps available and all the media through iTunes Store and everything like that. On the other hand, a ton of potential going on in Honeycomb. I find it a little bit easier to type on myself, and I love the front camera for video chat functionality. So, but we're not in a vacuum. So, catching up for sure with apps and stuff coming out for the dual core is a plus for the Xoom. iPad 2 is, literally less than 2 days away. It's a plus for Apple. So, there you go. It's hard to pick a winner. If I had to buy one of these right now, not worried about the future, I would go iPad. If I was worried about the future, I would go Xoom, because this iPad's going to be outdated in like 2 days, and this thing's just getting started, and it's got more horsepower underneath. But, we're not in a vacuum, so these are tough decisions. Anyway, we'll have lots more on the Xoom because John's got one, and then the iPad 2 coming out. We'll have full coverage of that and everything over on technobuffalo.com, and of course on the YouTube channel. John's got his thoughts. I'll have my thoughts. We'll keep working on it. There you go. Till next time, my name is Noah. Thank you for watching this long two-part tablet wars between the Motorola Xoom and the Apple iPad. We'll see you later.